Okay. And like I said, my internet has been unstable the last couple of days. So if I wink out, you're
I'm
recording
on
to the
my own.
cloud. Yeah, you're on your own. You're recording to the
Okay,
cloud. Okay. All
but
right.
you'll
So
still
go
have
ahead.
access to the recording, right?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this 45th webinar on the secret teachings of all ages by Manly P. Hall. This webinar series is available on Makara.us under the subheadings Moria Federation webinars, and then webinar series in progress as shown here. We can look forward to a new webinar from coming in. Oh, do I not? Oh, I didn't update this one. It looks like. Sorry about that. Dwayne Carpenter is going to be restarting his series in July. So we look forward to that. Previous episodes of this, the Secret Doctrine and the Treatise on Cosmic Fire series, are also available on YouTube. Just do a search for Francis Donald and the webinar you wish to view. You can join any of these webinars on the homepage of MoriaFederation.com. And you can sign up for Constant Contact. I always want to call it Constant Comment for some reason. And you'll get
One of my favorite teas.
yeah, that's a goodie. And you'll get, a lot of emails describing what's going on from Moria Federation. Anyway, okay, getting into the material. So a couple of webinars, we took a long look at this text that is beneath the illustration entitled The Saitic Isis. Saitic is a word for Sais, a city in ancient Egypt. And then last time we began a new chapter, the new chapter next to that illustration, entitled Isis, the Virgin of the World, who is a personification, ultimately, of noumenal substance in terms of theosophy, which is in the Hindu pantheon is Mula Prakriti, that shining primordial substance that is completely undifferentiated. So thus we have statements like, I, Isis, am all that has been, that is, or shall be. Am, has been, and shall be, all being aspects of manifestation of existence. Thus, Isis is not the inner Godhead, but rather the universal Shakti, the product of and the means by which the will to be comes into form. She is the Great Mother, the Divine Feminine, and remains ever a virgin because, while being the source of all manifestation, she nonetheless remains pure and unchanged by those acts of drawing substance from her for purposes of manifestation. Thus, she is like a stream whose waters remain pure despite the fact that they are used for 1,000 different purposes. She is known by various names throughout the world, by Artemis, Demeter, Ceres, Aphrodite, and Hera among the Greeks, different aspects of this universal goddess, not these differentiations take on the names of different goddesses, but at their core, you have the universal divine mother. By Sarasvati, Lakshmi, Radha, Parvati, and Durga among the Hindus, and of course by the Virgin Mary in Christianity. But though carrying some particular and revered aspect of her noumenal light, none of these goddesses reflect the entirety of that light. We then read the text beneath the central illustration, where we learned that she is the eldest daughter of Saturn, the oldest of the gods. Note the waters of substance, which she personifies pouring out from the vase at her feet. Very Aquarian. We also learned that Isis is the wife of Osiris, who represents the vitality of the sun, or prana. Thus, together, Isis and Osiris could be said to represent the vitalized substance of our solar system. MPH tells us, quote, Osiris is not the sun, but the sun is symbolic of the vital process of nature, which the ancients knew as Osiris. So it's an aspect, a third aspect indeed, of the sun, the vitality aspect. And that pretty much brings us up to where we left off last time. So we'll be,
Francis,
yeah.
sorry, I just wanted to say that Maria Christina added Sophia.
Yes, well, that's the great wisdom aspect. Oh, Sophia means wisdom. Yeah, there's this incredible structure in Turkey that was built in honor of her, became a mosque later. I hesitate to call it a church, a temple really, dedicated to her. Okay, yes. So could we get a reader for this? Well, some of this is review, but it's useful. Go ahead. Can we get a reader?
Okay, I'll start us off.
Okay.
First off, Anne Veronica says, Agia Sophia, a church.
Yeah, but I think it was, well, it's interesting. It'd be interesting to look at it. Was it dedicated to Sophia as a church, or was it made into a church? I'm not sure. Maybe it was a church to begin with, because I think it does antedate Christianity, so that could be it. Okay.
All right. After Osiris, here symbolized as the sun, had become king of Egypt and had given to his people the full advantage of his intellectual light, he continued his path through the heavens, visiting the peoples of other nations and converting all with whom he came in contact. Plutarch further asserts that the Greeks recognized in Osiris the same person whom they revered under the names of Dionysus and Bacchus. And while he was away from his country, his brother Typhon, the evil one, like the Loki of Scandinavia, plotted against the sun god to destroy him. Gathering 72 persons as fellow conspirators, he attained his nefarious end in a most subtle manner. He had a wonderful ornamented box made just the size of the body of Osiris. This he brought into a banquet hall where the gods and goddesses were feasting together. All admired the beautiful chest, and Typhon promised to give it to the one whose body fitted it most perfectly. One after another lay down in the box, but in the disappointment rose again until at last Osiris also tried. The moment he was in the chest, Typhon and his accomplices nailed the cover down and sealed the cracks with molten lead. They then cast the box into the Nile, down which it floated to the sea. Plutarch states that the date upon which this occurred was the 17th day of the month Athyr, when the sun was in the constellation of Scorpio. This is most significant, for the scorpion is the symbol of treachery. The time when Osiris entered the chest was also the same season that Noah entered the ark to escape from the deluge.
It was also significant because of the importance of the number 17 in ancient Egypt, which we'll be reading a quote on in a moment. Okay, so a lot here, a fascinating allegory, symbolic story, very cosmic in its ramifications. And so we'll take a closer look now. So first up, after Osiris, here symbolized as the sun, had become king of Egypt and had given to his people the full advantage of his intellectual light, he continued his path through the heavens, visiting the peoples of other nations and converting all with whom he came in contact. Okay, so this whole idea of intellectual light was personified by, in a previous chapter, remember we read about Hermes and Pymander, the vision he had of the mind of God, the great mind. And I think this is all connected with the fact that in this Aryan root race, the dispensation through Egypt by Hermes to bring in the light of mind is very much connected with this. Okay, so a question we might have is, did Osiris literally become king of Egypt? Even though it is said that in pre-dynastic times, gods walked among men, it seems to me more likely that Osiris overshadowed and worked through the ancient pharaohs, which were god-men in themselves, since, being, especially the early pharaohs, were high initiates. And this would be just as effective as Osiris actually incarnating. In other words, the direction, the guidance came through the pharaoh. I think the same could be said for visiting and converting the peoples of nearby nations. It was those who worked under the pharaoh that spread the quote unquote intellectual light, the third aspect of the sun, which Osiris represented. And also we have the simple fact that as the sun travels through the sky, it sequentially visits all the peoples of the world. Next, Plutarch further asserts that the Greeks recognized in Osiris the same person whom they revered under the names of Dionysus and Bacchus. Well, of course, that would be what Plutarch would recognize, being himself Greek. Same question vis-a-vis literal incarnation could be asked concerning Dionysus and Bacchus. Did they actually incarnate? I think it's more likely that these two, which some consider to be the same persona, did walk among men, since they were never considered to be that at the level of Godhead that Osiris was. And as inferred by Plutarch, it is possible that Osiris overshadowed these great teachers. Next, while he was away from his country, his brother, Typhon, the evil one, like the Loki of Scandinavia, plotted against the sun god to destroy him. So Typhon is also known as Set or Seth, right? Typhon from the Hebrew, Zepainai, signifies, according to Albert Pike, both a serpent and life itself. There's a passage in the Secret Doctrine that questions whether Typhon was originally considered to be evil at all. The same question can be asked about the Scandinavian Loki. So let's take a look. Reader, please.
Okay. Yvonne, can you read that for us, please?
Sure. It may be said that even in the Norse legends, in the sacred scrolls of the goddess Saga, we find Loki, the brother by blood of Odin, as Typhon, Ahriman, and others are brothers of Osiris, and Ormazd become evil only later when he has mixed too long with humanity. Like all other fire or light gods, fire burning and destroying, as well as warming and giving life, he ended by being accepted in the destructive sense of fire. The name Loki was derived from the old word lichen, to enlighten. It has therefore the same origin as the Latin lux, light. Hence, Loki is identical with Lucifer, light bringer. This title given to the Prince of Darkness is very suggestive and is a vindication in itself against the theological slander. But Loki is still more closely related to Prometheus, as he is shown chained to a sharp rock, while Lucifer, identified with Satan, was chained down in hell.
Thank you. Okay, any questions? Anytime you have any comments or questions, just raise your hand or make it known through the chat box. Okay, be that as it may, this origins and this conversion, interesting that spending too long among humans can turn you evil. Be it as it may, in the story quoted in the text, Typhon, as identified with Set, who remember is the brother of Osiris, is unquestionably evil. Can we get a reader, please?
Yes. And Veronica, can you read that for us, please?
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. In short, Typhon is the principle of corruption of darkness, of the lower world from which come earthquakes, tumultuous motion, tumultuous motion of the air, burning heat, lightning, and fiery meteors, plunge and pestilence. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Such too was the Ahriman of the Persians, and this revolt of the evil principle against the principle of good and light has been represented in every cosmogony under many variant forms. Osiris, on the contrary, by the intermediation of Isis, fills the material world with happiness, purity, and order, by which the harmony of nature is maintained. It was said that he died at the autumnal equinox when Taurus or the Pleiades rose in the evening, and that he rose to life again in the spring when vegetation was inspired with new activity. Morals and dogmas.
Thank you.
Okay, may I say something?
Of course.
Hagia Sophia, Saint Sophia, was a church. It for us and for our country, it has been desecrated, turned into a mosque, but it's a great symbol of Christianity. But
Yeah,
it's in
it's in
Turkey now.
Istanbul. I actually visited it. It's something. Have you been over there?
Yes. No, I haven't gone there, but it's for us in Greece. It's a great symbol of Christianity, and it's a source of pain for us to see it change in something that it's not. It's like taking a mosque and doing it into a church.
Right. Well, and one thing you could say about the Mohammedans who made it a mosque is they kept a lot of the original artwork up, like for instance the incredible tiles in the ceiling, the mosaics were all left and were still there to view.
But I think there's no paintings there of the. We have the saints on our church on our church walls. I think they've painted on top of them, but I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Okay. Well.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on before you read.
Sure.
Yvonne's got her hand up, and then Maria Christina does too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that the Hagia Sophia, Tom Hanks had a trilogy he did, like The Search for the Holy Grail and that, and the
Right.
trilogies that he did, the site of the movie was the Hagia Sophia. So you get to see all of it for a couple hours. It's wonderful.
No, great. Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you. And
Maria Christina? Your hand's up, but you have, there you go, there you go.
Thank you, thank you. A few years ago, there was a presentation by Robert Powell at the SRI conference on Sophia. And it was during the 2012, associating her with the center of the galaxy, actually. And I'll just read you this one quote. In the beginning was Sophia, and Sophia was with God, united with the Logos. Sophia was in the beginning with God. All things were made by the Logos and Sophia. Sophia is wisdom, and wisdom is the light of creation. And the light shines in the heavens, and the angels bring it forth. And she is in some ways considered a very contemporary emergence of the divine. By some, there's anyway.
yeah, maybe the personification is contemporary, but it's, these are the same attributes that you find with Isis,
Yes.
the principle of wisdom that makes manifestation possible,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
the only thing is that Sophia was considered extraplanetary. I guess that's the big anyway.
Well,
I know.
in theosophy, that would be, extra, outside the solar logos, which would mean to say universal. And, there's not a lot we can say about not a lot of specifics that we can point to when you're looking at creation beyond our solar system, but the principles remain the same. And so there is certainly a universal divine feminine that is the substantive aspect or Mula Prakriti on a universal level, just as there is within this solar system, which we have personified as Isis and Sophia and all the goddesses, basically, in some way partake of that universal divine feminine.
So if anyone is interested in a updated or, today, is check out Robert Powell, because he writes he's very dedicated to her, and with feminine wisdom and its presence in today. That's all. Thank you.
Good to know. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Then we have another hand.
Yeah.
Greg, go ahead, please.
I just noticed that when you're talking about Sophia, sorry about the echo, I can't seem to stop that. But
Okay, one way you can do is get real close to your mic and speak more softly.
okay.
Oops. That doesn't help.
So there's the first line of John out of the Bible, which is in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was. This is the same thing that was described by the other person who spoke about Sophia. In the beginning was Sophia. So they're very similar in relationship.
Yeah, the word and the whole idea of the logos in its manifestation is always represented as feminine. The word in Hindu is Vash, V-A-C-H. In the Chinese, it's Kuan Yin, which occultly is Quan Shi Yin, right? Which is the higher aspect of it. But in every time you have this, Sarasvati is an aspect of that too. The player of the Veena, And what that does is that through sound connects deity with manifestation. It's a relating or intermediate principle. And Sophia is certainly along that line. Interesting that there's so much interest in Sophia. This is not even one of the topics that was directly brought up in this webinar, but I'm always fascinated when that happens. Okay, anyone else?
I don't see anything. And up
There's Scott.
there's Scott. Go ahead, Scott.
Hi.
Hey,
As you know, I'm sure there's 2 pages on Typhon in the Theosophical Glossary. Are you going to cover some of that?
on Python?
No, Typhon.
Oh, Typhon.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe it did come up. However, we're probably not out of Typhon by the end of this webinar. So I'll take a look and see what he says about him.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, well, a lot is intimated here in this quote from Secret Doctrine, where it's very much related to the Great Bear. It's a primordial creator God, and just like in so many religions, you have these first-rate types that were there in the beginning, ended up resisting the manifesting principle, and because of that, the angels that chose not to incarnate, that kind of thing, and as a result, they became or were cast as evil later on. But yeah, I'll take a look, Scott. That's good to know. Anyone else?
Okay, so it's time for Anne Veronica to read.
Good. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. She did. She did.
Yes, I did.
Wait, she did.
But it's okay, I can read again.
Yeah, but we're not there yet. Hang on a sec. So next we have, let's make sure I'm where I say I am. Hold on a sec. Gathering 72. Where did I go?
I read the previous one, Francis.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to find my place in my notes here. Just a minute, please. I don't know how I got so lost. Sorry, guys. Hang on just a sec. Well, it's really weird. All right, hang on. Okay, I'm catching up here. I think I hit a button and it took me to a whole other place on my notes. That's the problem. So I'm finding my way back. So next we have the conspiracy of Typhon, fashioning the coffin for Osiris. Both Gerald Massey and G.R.S. Mead, both of which we quote from a lot, recognize this story as a cosmic metaphor for the incarnation of deity. Let's take a look at this quote from Mead's Thrice Great Hermes. And Biel, if you would read with me, if you would read the large type, and then I'll read the small type. Does that work?
Okay. Yeah, okay. And they say that while he was away, Typhon attempted no revolution, owing to Isis keeping very careful guard and having the power in her hands, holding it fast. But that when Osiris came back, he made with art a while for him, conjuring 72 men and having his co-worker, a queen coming out of Ethiopia, whom they call Aso.
Aso is probably the prototype of the alchemical Azoth. Ethiopia was the land par excellence of the black magicians, as opposed to the good magicians of Egypt. This, of course, being the Egyptian point of view. Go ahead.
But that after measuring out for himself in secret the body of Osiris,
The body of Osiris may mean the cosmos, great or little, similar to the body of Adam from the Kabbalah.
and having devised according to the size,
Or according to the greatness, using greatness in its Gnostic signification, as here meaning the great cosmos and also the cosmic body of man.
a beautiful and extraordinarily ornamented chest.
In Pythagorean terms, an oddly ordered rectangular encasement, referring perhaps to a certain configuration of cosmic permanent atoms.
Brought into the banqueting hall.
Literally, the drinking together, referring perhaps to the conjunction of certain cosmic forces and also microcosmically to souls in a state of joy, festivity, or bliss prior to incarnation.
And that when they were delighted at the sight and wondered, Typhon, in sport, promised to give the chest to him who could make himself exactly equal to it by laying himself down in it.
That is, prove the quote unquote permanent atoms were his own, if we think in terms of reincarnation.
And that when all were trying, one after another, since no one fitted, Osiris stepped in and laid himself down. And they who were present, running up, dashed on the lid, and after some of them had closed it down with fastenings and others had poured hot lead over it, they carried it out to the river.
The sacred Nile, Great Jordan, etc., the stream of ocean, which flowing downwards is the birth of men, and upwards the birth of gods. So, this is J.R.S. Mead had this incredible insight. I think he was definitely tapped in to his intuition, as you can see by his interpretation of this material. Okay, any thoughts or questions? This is also a great example of symbolic interpretation. Right? It's a real how-to. I see a hand.
Yeah, a couple of them. James, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask briefly about permanent atoms, what they mean.
Permanent atoms are DK at one point says, actually, they're not atoms at all. They're just nexus of force, which stores the that which is gained through incarnation. At least the lower three permanent atoms, or the lower two in the middle unit, are stored that which is gained in previous lifetimes. Now, it's not the specific events that's recorded in the Akashic records, but the level or quality of attainment, you could say, is stored in the permanent atoms, so that upon reincarnation, the permanent atoms are used to reformulate the physical and astral sheaths and the mental unit, which is like a permanent atom for the lower part, to formulate the mental sheath. And then you
Oh.
also have higher permanent atoms, which hold other content, but not for the purposes of reincarnating, right? The mental, the Buddhic, every plane has its own permanent atom. Okay, is that clear?
Yeah, thank you very much.
You bet. Okay,
And then Yvonne's got her hand up.
yeah, Yvonne.
There's an educational program on TV, and they were talking about the black pharaohs of Africa below Egypt, and saying that they were greater than the white pharaohs, and eventually they overtook Egypt, the upper Egypt, and the black pharaohs were a greater race, more superior. I just wondered if that had anything to do with it. They're calling them good and bad here, black magicians as opposed to good magicians.
We always have to be careful when you're looking at black and white because they reverse themselves. You have the lowest darkness or black, which is completely form oriented with no consciousness of spirit. And also the orientation is completely to the form. And there you have the black magicians, right? But you also have the darkness that is the source of all light, which stands above the light, right? And that's another form of darkness. DK speaks of it in one of his rules. You go beyond light, beyond color, beyond light, into the darkness, and at the very center of that darkness, a point of light appears, and the one initiator appears, right? So this is a place of even greater holiness. So the question then becomes, when you're talking about black or white pharaohs, which one of those darknesses is it? Or could it be something else altogether, which is just simply a designation for the South because of, for instance, the color of the skin of those in the South? It's really hard to determine just from what you said.
Yeah, and I think the black hole that creation comes from goes with this too, right? So it's interesting.
It is. Black is another term for the unknown. And you have all kinds of unknowns, right? Both good and bad. Okay, let's see, back to the text where we have Plutarch states that the date upon which this occurred was the 17th day of the month Athir, when the sun was in the constellation of Scorpio. This is most significant for the scorpion is a symbol of treachery. The time when Osiris entered the chest was also the same season that Noah entered the ark to escape from the deluge. In these two readings, we learned the numerical significance of Osiris, as well as their association with the deluge. Can we get a reader, please?
Okay. First, I want to say Maria has typed in that emptiness equals dark.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, okay, and then for reading, Scott, can you read that for us, please?
How appropriate.
Indeed, 17. How about that? A mystery number. Among the Egyptians, number 17 was associated with one of their deepest and most mystical teachings, one which has never been properly apprehended by modern scholars, namely the myth of Osiris. Here we find Osiris as the sun god, number 1, Isis, the moon goddess, number 7, and Set, the destroyer, who is none other than Saturn, number 8, the great initiator, who induced Osiris to enter a coffin which exactly fitted him, and who is identical with the serpent who persuaded Adam and Eve fall into generation, or to be clothed in coats of skin. the physical body, which is a coffin that just fits.
So you see here that you're looking at the fundamental duality of deity and form, right? Of Osiris and sun god and moon goddess, right? Isis as a moon goddess, 1 and 7. 7 being the sum total, the 7 stages, the 7 planes, the means by which manifestation is realized, and the 1 ever the noumenal source of the 7, right? Interesting stuff. So, I hope you all get it by now that the coffin really is the body, right? It's the form aspect that Osiris, through great sacrifice, willingly incarnated through, right? I thought it was interesting that they even used lead, the densest of all matter, to seal the coffin, right? Okay, another reader, please.
Karen, can you read that, please?
The constellation of the 7 stars was also figured as an ark of salvation, in which souls were ferried over the abyss. It was the bier of the dead, the bearer into a future life, called the coffin of the 7 stars and the sarcophagus of Osiris. The region of the great bear is the region of the coffin of Osiris, and the dead Osiris rises from the coffin as the living Horus to find himself in the company of the 7 great spirits in the service of their Lord. These 7 are behind the constellation of Ursa Major, or the Tai uterus of the northern
Thigh, just like your thigh.
the thigh. It was the constellation of Ursa Major, or the Thigh uterus of the northern heaven.
So, what he's saying is that they're using the term thigh, but what they mean is the uterus. Go ahead.
Anut places them for the protection of the coffin of Osiris. These 7 servants of the risen Horus are the 7 elementaries and chronotypes continued into the psychotheistic phase as spirits or gods that constitute the pleroma of powers, whose perfect flower was Horus, or the Christ, whose symbol is the 8-rayed star. The 7 are called planks in the body of the boat, the ark, Machen, which carries the souls out of Hades, the ark of salvation, and boat of the shipwrecked. Horus is the that steers his of souls saved from the waters. Here the 7 in the ark with Horus are identical with the British 7 in the ark with Arthur, son of Art, the bear. The saved souls rejoices that he has sat where the great ministers are, the company of 7. He says, I have come out of the place of the ark during the passage Horus, son of Isis, has brought me. It has been shown that Horus was the fisherman, and that 2 of the 7 are spoken of as fellow fishermen. Thus the 7 planks of the boat of souls, the 7 spirits in the service of their Lord, the Christ, are also 7 fishers of men, or savers of souls, with and for Horus. Come ye after me, says Jesus, and I will make you fishers of men. The Natural Genesis.
Thank you. This is quintessential, Massey, this Natural Genesis. He has this unique ability to analyze and call on the origins of these ideas. Okay. Next up, the rest of the story of Isis, and Osiris. Can we get a reader, please?
Greg, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. Plutarch further declares that the Pans and Satyrs, the nature spirits and elementals.
Okay,
First
hold
is-
it, hold it, hold it. I'm sorry, you still have that echo.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with it, so I'll
Yeah,
not read.
okay, thank you. James, can you read that for us, please?
Sure. Is the sound good?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Plutarch further declares that the Pans and Satyrs, the nature spirits and elementals, first discovered that Osiris had been murdered. These immediately raised an alarm, and from this incident, the word panic, meaning fright or amazement of the multitudes, originated. Isis, upon receiving the news of her husband's murder, which she learned from some children who had seen the murderers making off with the box, at once robed herself in mourning and started forth in quest of him. At length, Isis discovered that the chest had floated to the coast of Byblos. There it had lodged in the branches of a tree, which in a short time miraculously grew up around the box. This so amazed the king of that country that he ordered the tree to be cut down and a pillar made from its trunk to support the roof of his palace. Isis, visiting Byblos, recovered the body of her husband, but it was again stolen by Typhon, who cut it into 14 parts, which he scattered all over the earth. Isis, in despair, began gathering up the severed remains of her husband, but found only 13 pieces. The 14th part, the phallus, she reproduced in gold, for the original had fallen into the river Nile and had been swallowed by a fish. Typhon was later slain in battle by the son of Osiris. Some of the Egyptians believed that the souls of the gods were taken to heaven, where they shone forth as stars. It was supposed that the soul of Isis gleamed from the dog star, while Typhon became the constellation of the bear. It is doubtful, however, whether this idea was ever generally accepted.
Thank you, James. Okay, so for each section of the rest of the story, I've interpolated G.R.S. Mead's commentary. So first, we have Plutarch further declares that the Pans and Satyrs, the nature spirits and elementals, first discovered that Osiris had been murdered. These immediately raised an alarm, and from this incident, the word panic, meaning fright or amazement of the multitudes, originated. And now the GRS commentary on the same general section. And again, BL, could we do our little dance?
Okay. The Pans and Satyrs,
Two classes of elemental existences
that inhabit round Chemis,
that is Apu, the Panopolis of the Greeks. The name Chemmis, the modern Achmim, is derived from an old Egyptian name.
were the first to sense the death of Osiris and give tongue concerning what was being done, and that on this account sudden disturbances and emotions of crowds are even unto this day called panics.
Thank you. So next up, Isis, upon receiving the news of her husband's murder, which she learned from some children who had seen the murderers make off with the box, at once robed herself in mourning and started forth in quest of him. Okay, again, go ahead, BL.
But when Isis
As Mother Nature,
sensed it, she cut off one of her curls and put on a mourning dress, whence the city to this day bears the name Copto.
meaning I cut and beat the breast as a sign of mourning.
But others think the name signifies privation, for they say that koptine is to deprive.
The depriving things of their power or negation. Osiris being the fertilizing or generative or positive power.
And they say that she, wandering about in every direction and finding no way out, never approached anyone without accosting them. Nay, she asked even little children about the chest. And they happened to have seen and showed the mouth through which the friends of Typhon left the vessel go into the sea.
Thank you. So next up, at length Isis discovered that the chest had floated to the coast of Byblos. There it had lodged in the branches of a tree, which in a short time miraculously grew up around the box. This so amazed the king of that country that he ordered the tree to be cut down and a pillar made from its trunk to support the roof of his palace. And one more time? No, it's...
And the king,
Go ahead. And the king, the ruler of the form side of things,
marveling at the greatness of the tree, after cutting off the branches and rounding off the trunk that surrounded the coffin without its being seen, set it up as the prop of his roof.
on the erroneously called Gnostic gems, the lopped trunk is a frequent symbol. The lopped five-branched, presumably. I'm not sure what that last phrase means. Okay, and next up we have Isis, visiting Byblos, recovered the body of her husband, but it was again stolen by Typhon, who cut it into 14 parts, which he scattered all over the earth. Isis, in despair, began gathering up the severed remains of her husband, but found only 13 pieces. The 14th part, the phallus, she reproduced in gold, for the original had fallen into the river Nile and had been swallowed by a fish. And one more time. Yeah.
And they say that when Isis had gone a journey to her son Horus, who was being reared at Botus, and had put away the chest, Typhon, taking his dogs out by night toward the moon, came upon it and recognizing the body, tore it into 14 pieces and scattered them abroad.
Is Boutos connected with Boutas, the plowman in the constellation Arcturus, the voyage therefore being celestial? That is, of movement of the world soul or change of state in the individual soul? Next. Typhon was later slain in battle by the son of Osiris. So let's take a look at a dialogue between Horus and Osiris that took place before the alluded battle between Horus and Typhon. Can we get a reader, please? Including the small part.
Maria Christina, can you read that for us, please?
Unmute.
There you go.
Thank you. Thereafter, Osiris, coming to Horus out of the invisible, Hades, worked through him and trained him for the fight. He then put this test question to him. What animal does he think most useful for those who go out to fight? And when Horus said horse, he marveled at him and was quite puzzled why he did not say lion rather than horse. Accordingly, Horus said, lion is a needful thing to one requiring help, but a horse can scatter in pieces the foe in flight and consume him utterly. Thus hearing, Osiris rejoiced that Horus was fitly prepared. And it is said that as many were changing over to the side of Horus, Theris, Typhon's concubine, came too. The fight lasted for many days and Horus won. Nevertheless, when Isis received Typhon in bonds, she did not make away with him. Far from it, she unbound him and let him go.
I'll read this part. The horse may symbolize purified passion, and lion, a certain receptive power of the mind. The white horse was presumably opposed to the red ass of Typhon, as the purified vehicle of the soul contrasted with the impure. Lion was one of the grades in the Mithraic mysteries. It was a sun animal. Okay, and next, or finally, some of the Egyptians believed that the souls of the gods were taken to heaven, where they shone forth as stars. It was supposed that the soul of Isis gleamed from the dog star, while Typhon became the constellation of the bear. It is doubtful, however, whether this idea was ever generally accepted. Gerald Massey mirrors this statement, quote, hence, as Plutarch says, the dog star is the soul of Isis, Orion the soul of Horus, and the bear is the soul of Typhon. Soul and star being synonymous in the Egyptian word Seb. It is appropriate that Typhon, the destructive aspect of the first ray, is associated with the great bear, but this association also points to a time when Typhon was recognized as a primordial creator god rather than the negative counterpart to Osiris. Okay, and next up, could we get a reader?
Nisa, can you read that for us, please? There we go.
Among the Egyptians, Isis is often representative with a headdress consisting of the empty throne chair of her murdered husband, and his peculiar structure was accepted during certain dynasties as her hieroglyphic. The headdresses of the Egyptians have great symbolic and emblematic importance, for they represent the auric bodies of the superhuman intelligences and are used in the same way that the nimbus, halo, and aureole are used in Christian religious art. Frank C. Higgins, a well-known Masonic symbolist, has astutely noted that the ornate headgears of certain gods and pharaohs are inclined backward at the same angle as the Earth's axis. The robes, insignia, jewels, and ornamentations of the ancient hierophants symbolize the spiritual energies radiating from the human body. Modern science is rediscovering many of the lost secrets of Hermetic philosophy. One of these is the ability to gauge the mental development, the soul qualities, and the physical health of an individual from the streamers of semi-visible electric force which pour through the surface of the skin of every human being at all times during his life. For details concerning a scientific process for making the auric emanations visible, see The Human Atmosphere by Dr. Walter J. Kilner.
Thank you. So first up, among the Egyptians, Isis is often represented with a headdress consisting of the empty throne chair of her murdered husband. And this peculiar structure was accepted during certain dynasties as her hieroglyphic. That would be some of the earlier dynasties. Here are 3 depictions of Isis with a throne headdress. The throne also suggests the form side, the throne of God, rather than the God himself. And thus, you have that fundamental duality of the highest level of the substantive aspect as the queen of heaven, and then the deity, which in combination with that creates manifestation. Next, the headdresses of the Egyptians have great symbolic and emblematic importance, for they represent the auric bodies of the superhuman intelligences and are used in the same way that the nimbus, halo, and aureole are used in Christian religious art. Great observation. But in addition to indicating a state of holiness, as does the halo of Christian art, these headdresses are symbolic of the particular qualities inherent in the deities they represent. For example, the symbolism Isis throne headdress suggests the material aspect of throne, which I just went over, of the invisible but ever present deity. Next, Frank C. Higgins, a well-known Masonic symbolist, has astutely noted that the ornate headgears of certain gods and pharaohs are inclined backwards at the same angle as the Earth's axis. There is definitely something to this, as you can see in this illustration. Here I've transferred the angle of the axis, which is 23.4 degrees, onto the drawings. And here's a photograph. You can see it's real close. I mean, it's, you know. And here's a photo of Higgins and one of his monographs entitled AUM, the Lost Word. This alignment could be a symbol for the planetary consciousness of the wearer, or even a method to get in touch with that consciousness. Fascinating what keeps unfolding about what the Egyptians knew. Next up, the robes, insignia, jewels, and ornamentations of the ancient hierophants symbolize the spiritual energies radiating from the human body. We can see the symbolism in Tutankhamun's mask, where an alternation of indigo and gold bands suggests a coming forth from the unseen to the seen, from deity to manifestation of that deity in human form. Since Horus was the son of God in ancient Egypt, wearing this breastplate would certainly mark the wearer as a priest of Horus. And finally, modern science is rediscovering many of the lost secrets of Hermetic philosophy. One of these is the ability to gauge the mental development, the soul qualities, and the physical health of an individual from the streamers of semi-visible electric force which pour through the surface of the skin of every human being at all times during his life. For details concerning a scientific process for making the auric emanations visible, see The Human Atmosphere by Dr. Walter J. Kilner. Here's Kilner's book and one of his illustrations. Unfortunately, modern science still rejects the concept of etheric substance or etheric emanations, let alone streamers of semi-visible electric force. Of course, you know, they're only semi-visible to clairvoyance and fully visible to higher clairvoyance. But clairvoyance and alternative healers of all sorts increasingly work with this energy, even if they're not able to directly see it. Next up, could we get a reader, please?
Okay, let me see. Janet, can you read that for us, please?
I think there's one comment out there, though.
Yeah, she was saying goodbye.
Oh, okay. Isis is sometimes symbolized by the head of a cow. Occasionally, the entire animal is her symbol. The first gods of the Scandinavians were licked out of the blocks of ice by the mother cow, Humia, who symbolized the principle of natural nutriment and lucidity because of her milk. Occasionally, Isis is represented as a bird. She often carries in one hand the crux ansata, the symbol of eternal life, and in the other, the flowered scepter, symbolic of her authority. Thoth Hermes Trismegistus, the founder of Egyptian learning, the wise man of the ancient world, gave to the priests and the philosophers of antiquity the secrets which have been preserved to this day in myth and legend. These allegories of mathematic figures conceal the secret formula for the spiritual, mental, mortal, and physical regeneration commonly known as the mystic chemistry of the soul, alchemy. These sublime truths were communicated to the initiates of mystery schools, but were concealed from the profane. The latter, unable to understand the abstract philosophical tenets, worshiped the concrete sculptured idols which were emblematic of these secret truths. The wisdom of the secrecy of Egypt are epitomized in the phoenix, which has preserved its secret from the seekers of 100 generations. The mysteries of Hermeticism, the great spiritual truths hidden from the world by the ignorance, and the keys of the secret doctrine of ancient philosophy are all symbolized by Virgin Isis. Veiled from head to foot, she reveals her wisdom only to try and initiated for few who have earned the right to enter her sacred presence. Here from the veiled figure of nature, its shroud of obscurity, stand face the divine reality.
Thank you. So it's epitomized by the Sphinx, not the Phoenix. So first up, Isis is some.
Okay. Sorry. Magda says Egyptians' headpieces, rods, and ornaments were not just symbolic. They were actual tools to draw the invisible forces upon the individuals wearing them.
Yes, ancient Egypt was, and DK says this, that they were very oriented towards physical magic, it's very 7-3 stuff of really manifesting through these emblems. But, that doesn't negate their symbolism. In order to be a powerful magical tool, you have to have a symbolic connection with the unseen realms from which you're drawing these forces, these manifestations. Thank you. Okay. So first up, Isis is sometimes symbolized by the head of a cow. Occasionally, the entire animal is her symbol. As the Great Mother, the cow symbolism is not that surprising. The duality of the matter aspect is indicated by the horns, and the cow's milk is symbolic of the Milky Way, believed by the ancients to be the numinal source of all cosmic entities. This was carried over in India, where the cow is still sacred. And Hindus do not eat beef. Okay, and can we get a reader for this?
Tom, can you read that for us, please?
An Egyptian priest stands before an image of Isis, or the Great Mother Nature, represented by a cow, and is making an offering of some trefoil plant. Over the cow is the sacred ureus, or symbol of the Egyptian triad, consisting of the winged globe and the serpent and representing the three powers of creation, preservation, and reproduction. The dark disk is God unknown as the source of all things. The serpent is the divine wisdom or emanation, and the wings are those of the brooding and flying and protecting care and goodness of the spirit.
Thank you. Next, the first gods of the Scandinavians were licked out of blocks of ice by the mother cow, Audhumla, who symbolized the principle of natural nutriment and fecundity because of her milk. The caption accompanying this illustration reads, Audhumla licks free Buri as she produces rivers of milk from her udders, in an illustration from an Icelandic 18th century manuscript, I think it's actually 13th century, of the Prose Edda. In Norse mythology, Buri is the father of all the gods. So this is a very primordial event here. Next, occasionally Isis is represented as a bird. She often carries in one hand the crux ansata, the symbol of eternal life, and in the other, the flowered scepter, symbol of her authority. Here's a winged Isis and an icon of her with a throne headdress. I actually couldn't find any images of her as a bird that also indicated that she was Isis, but she's often depicted as a winged being. And we also have an icon with her with a throne headdress, a flowered scepter, and a crux ansata or ankh. Wings in all religions suggest spirit. The scepter is a symbol of rulership. The fact that it is capped by a lotus suggests that Isis, the bearer, rules all the natural world. The ankh represents the union of the spirit and matter and was believed to bestow life. HPB expands on this. Can we get a reader?
Yes, Magda, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. As an emblem of a door, gate, mouth, or the place of outlet, the ankh signifies the straight gate that leads to the kingdom of heaven, far more than the birthplace in a physiological sense. It is a cross in a circle and crux ansata, truly, but it is a cross on which all the human passions have to be crucified before the yogi passes through the straight gate, the narrow circle that widens into an infinite one as soon as the inner man has passed the threshold.
Thank you. Next, Thoth Hermes Trismegistus, the founder of Egyptian learning, the wise man of the ancient world, gave to the priests and philosophers of antiquity the secrets which have been preserved to this day in myth and legend. These allegories and emblematic figures conceal the secret formula for spiritual, mental, moral, and physical regeneration, commonly known as the mystic chemistry of the soul, alchemy. We studied Hermes Trismegistus and his vision of Pymander a few webinars back. You may remember that his priests bore in front of him, I think it was 42 books, which really just represents areas of wisdom, right? Alchemy, called here the mystic chemistry of the soul, is a form of sacred magic that delves into the numinal origin of the elements. Since Hermes and Egyptian alchemy formed the bedrock of the priest class in ancient Egypt, let's take a closer look at some of the symbolism used in this occult science. So here on the left, you have a chart that shows a number of alchemical symbols. Can we get a reader, please?
Ann P., can you read that for us, please?
Sure. All masters in alchemy who have written concerning the great work have employed symbolical and figurative expressions and have been right in so doing, not only to deter the profane from operations which would be dangerous for them, but to make themselves intelligible to adepts by revealing the entire world of analogies, which is ruled by the one and sovereign dogma of Hermes. For such, gold and silver are the sun and moon, or the king and queen. Sulfur is the flying eagle. Mercury is the winged and bearded hermaphrodite, throned upon a cube and crowned with flames. Matter, or salt, is the winged dragon. Metals in the molten state are lions of various colors. Finally, the whole work is symbolized by the pelican and phoenix. Hermetic art is, therefore, at one and the same time a religion, a philosophy, and a natural science. Considered as religion, it is that of the ancient magi and the initiates of all the ages. As a philosophy, its principles may be found in the school of Alexandria and in the theories of Pythagoras. As science, its principles must be sought from Paracelsus, Nicholas Flamel, and Raymond Lully.
Sorry, I didn't cite this. I don't know just where it's from. Okay. Oh, that's why, because it keeps going. It's from Transcendental Magic. Can we get another reader, please?
Yes. Gordon, can you read that for us, please?
Yes. The science is true only for those who accept and understand the philosophy and religion, while its processes are successful only for the adept and who has attained sovereign volition and has thus become monarch of the elementary word. For the great agent of the solar work is that force described in the Hermetic symbol of the emerald table. It is universal magical power. It is the igneous spiritual motor. It is the OD of the Hebrews and the astral light, according to the expression which we have adopted in this work. There is the secret living and the philosophical fire, of which all Hermetic philosophers speak only under the most mysterious reservations. There is the universal sperm, the secret of which they guarded, representing it only under the emblem of the caduceus of Hermes. Here then is the great Hermetic arcanum, which we reveal it for the first time clearly and devoid of mystical figures, that which the adepts term dead substances are bodies as found in nature. Living substances are those which have been assimilated and magnetized by the science and will of the operator. Therefore, the great work is something more than chemical operation. It is an actual creation of the human word, initiated into the power of the word of God himself.
Thank you. Okay, next. These sublime truths were communicated to the initiates of the mystery schools, but were concealed from the profane. The latter, unable to understand the abstract philosophical tenets, worshipped the concrete sculptured idols, which were emblematic of these secret truths. And so it is and has always been. The profane must be protected from the harmful effects of premature knowledge, whereas the initiates must protect themselves from the unwanted attentions of the unready. Hence, all true religions must guard the upward way and yet provide alternative symbols, blinds, if you will, such as sculpted idols, etc., for the merely curious and the emotionally polarized masses. Next, the wisdom and secrecy of Egypt are epitomized in the Sphinx, which has preserved its secret from the seekers of 100 generations. DK says, around the constellation Leo, two great mysteries are found. The mystery of the Sphinx, connected with the relation of Leo and Virgo, and tied up with the secret of the solar angels. This is not the mystery of soul and form, but the mystery of the higher and the lower mind and their relation to each other. By the way, right now, Uranus is conjunct Mercury in Taurus. Keep in mind that Hermes, overshadowed by Pymander or divine mind, introduced Manas to ancient Egypt and thus forwards the purpose of this Aryan root race. Keep those thoughts and questions coming. Next up, the mysteries of Hermeticism, the great spiritual truths hidden from the world by the ignorance of the world, and the keys of the secret doctrine of the ancient philosophers are all symbolized by the Virgin Isis. Well, Isis represents all of nature, gross and subtle. The veil of Isis hides the true face of the spiritual sun from the unready. Hermeticism is an ancient occult science that allows its initiates to pull that veil aside, not through outer alchemical practices, but through soul infusion and initiation, as described in the final passage. Veiled from head to foot, she reveals her wisdom only to the tried and initiated few who have earned the right to enter her sacred presence, tear from the veiled figure of nature its shroud of obscurity, and stand face to face with the divine reality. Okay, next up, could we get a reader, please?
Yes, I'll go ahead and read that. The explanations in these pages of the symbols peculiar to the Virgin Isis are based, unless otherwise noted, on sections from a free translation of the fourth book of the Bibliotheca des Philosophes. In other words, the
Hermétique.
Book of Hermes. Yeah. Entitled The Hermetical Signification of the Symbols and Attributes of Isis. There, I like that entitlement better. With interpolations by the compiler to amplify and clarify the text. The statues of Isis were decorated with the sun, moon, and stars, and many emblems pertaining to the earth, over which Isis was believed to rule as the guardian spirit of nature personified. Several images of the goddess have been found upon which the marks of her dignity and position were still intact. According to the ancient philosophers, she personified universal nature, the mother of all productions. The deity was generally represented as a partly nude woman, often pregnant, sometimes loosely covered with a garment, either of green or black color, or of 4 different shades intermingled, black, white, yellow, and red.
Okay, so first we have this passage citing the 4th volume of the Bibliotheca des Philosophes Hermétiques, shown here. I tried to find the translated version, right, which is called the Hermetical Signification of the Symbols and Attributes of Isis. I could not find it anywhere. I was really hoping to be able to give a quote from it, but I couldn't even find the book, which is unusual. So then we have the statues of Isis were decorated with the sun, moon, and stars, and many emblems pertaining to the earth, over which Isis was believed to rule as the guardian spirit of nature personified. Several images of the goddess have been found upon which the marks of her dignity and position were still intact. So if statues of Isis were, quote, decorated with the sun, moon, and stars and many emblems pertaining to the earth, it would have had to appear in the hieroglyphs, which sometimes adorn, especially in later dynasties, these statues. The only appearance of a celestial body that I could find in all the representations of Isis is the sun disk between the horns of a cow, which is usually attributed to Hathor, but which also depicted Isis in the later kingdoms, sculptures. Finally,
France,
yeah,
oh, sorry. James wants to know who was the author of that.
of what?
I think the previous passages that we read. Yeah, that.
So, oh, okay. So who wrote this? I think it's a compilation. Let's see. Chez André Charles Caillot. This Chez.
I think Shay means house. That could just be the publisher.
It could be, yeah. I'm not sure. Did I cite? Let me go back there. No, it's not. There's no author given. I think it's the compiler. So it's probably a number of quotes from different sources, be my guess. So yeah, it'd be nice to know, because then we could approach it from author and try to find, a translation. Well, it's been translated. He tells us that much, right? But like I said, not a single hit could I find on that title. So, okay, yeah, we got through this. And so, finally, according to the ancient philosophers, she personified universal nature. If you need a two-word carry away for what Isis means, that's a good one. Universal nature, the mother of all productions, right? The deity was generally represented as a partly nude woman, often pregnant, sometimes loosely covered with a garment, either of green or black color or of 4 different shades intermingled: black, white, yellow, and red. So we've established that Isis personified universal nature. The only image of Isis that even hints at pregnancy that I could find is this late dynasty depiction. But as MPH notes, she is often depicted in the colors black, white, yellow, and red, which represents, interestingly, 2 pairs of opposites in the color spectrum, each pair representing life and death, or generation and corruption. White and black, well, there's fundamental pairs of opposites. Also, if you have a color globe, then you have white as all the colors mixed in terms of light, and black as all the colors mixed in terms of pigments. So it's the densest when looked at black in that way. But you can also, as mentioned before, see white as the light of manifestation, and black as the darkness of the origin of things. Red and green are very associated with nature, as the life and death of, for instance, the plant kingdom, right? Okay, let's take a look at the illustration. at the center of the page called the sistrum. Could we get a reader, please?
Yvonne, can you read that, please?
The sistrum is designed to represent to us that everything must be kept in continual agitation and cease from motion, that they ought to be mused and well shaken whenever they begin to grow drowsy, as it were, and to droop in their motion. For, say they, the sound of these sistra averts and drives away typho, meaning hereby that as corruption clogs and puts a stop to the regular course of nature, so generation by the means of motion loosens it again and restores it to its former vigor. Now the outer surface of this instrument is of a convex figure, as within its circumference are contained those four chords or bars, only three shown, which make up such a rattling when they are shaken. Nor is this without its meaning, for that part of the universe which is subject to generation and corruption is contained within the sphere of the moon, and whatever motions or changes may happen therein, they are all effected by the different combinations of the four elementary bodies: fire, earth, water, and air. Moreover, upon the upper part of the convex surface of the sistrum is carved the effigies of a cat with a human visage, as on the lower edge of it, under those moving chords, is engraved on the one side the face of Isis, and on the other that of
Nephthys.
Nephthys, by the faces symbolically representing generation and corruption, which, as has been already observed, is nothing but the motion and alteration of the four elements, one amongst another.
Thank you. Okay, here's an Egyptian and Greek image of Isis shaking the sistrum, which is done with a quick rotation of the wrist. And here are two actual sistrums, one with 4 bars, one with 3. These bars pierced a series of bronze rings, which rattled when shook. Let's take a look at the text. First, the sistrum is designed to represent to us that everything must be kept in continual agitation and never cease from motion, that they ought to be mused and well shaken whenever they began to grow drowsy, as it were, and to droop in their motion. It's interesting. It's like the Rajasic state is preferred to the Tamasic. It's to shake one out of the torpor of the uninhabited form aspect. That is to say, the torpor of Tamas, T-A-M-A-S. Gerald Massey gives us further insight. Could we get a reader, please?
Yes. Karen, can you read that for us, please? Oh, before you do, Magda says red and green are also a pair of opposites, warm and cold, like the red and blue of Christ's vests.
Well, they're literally opposites on the color wheel. So, you have in those, let's see, where is it? There it is, yeah. You have in these two pairs of opposites, the top and bottom of the color globe, and you pierce it horizontally as well, because red and green are the literal color opposites on the color wheel. Yes, good observation, thank you. Okay, yes, reader.
The 6 or hexad was held by Pythagoras to be the perfect sacred number. It was called Venus, the mother. One type of this number was the sistrum, or sessus, which was a figure of 6, with its 3 wires and their 6 ends. The sessus represented motion and generation in relation to the 6th day of the period. Sesh means motion, to open, unclose, free passage, and the seshes was sometimes ornamented with the mirror of reproduction in place of the wires. In Egyptian, Ses or Sas is the name of breath and breathing, the natural genesis.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, you can hear the sound of the sistrum in the name that represents its motion, right? Seshish. Next up, for they say, the sound of these sistra averts and drives away typho, meaning hereby that as corruption clogs and puts a stop to the regular course of nature, so generation, by the means of motion, loosens it again and restores it to its former vigor. This suggests the imposition of rajas in order to break a tamasic or unconscious state, represented by the serpent god Typhon. But Typhon, as I mentioned before, was originally the primordial genetrix with no negative connotations. Only later was, and I say she, believed to be evil because most references to Typhon place her as a female, but then when she takes the place of Set or Seth, it becomes a male god. And next, could we get a reader, please? This is a shout of Typhon.
Scott, can you read that, please?
When Tiamat was confounded with the indefinite monster of chaos, disorder, and distraction, her fall has taken place, and she has then been identified with the dragon of darkness, the Akhek of eclipse, the devourer death, the gape of the greedy grave, exactly as it was with the most ancient genetrix of Egypt, who was turned into the evil Typhon, the female Satan and Egyptian Hepha, her name supplying that of Tepi for the typical devourer. These types of commencement did not begin in India to be continued in Acadia and to end in Egypt as Typhon, the genetrix of the 7 stars, who was the first in heaven, first by name and nature.
Yeah. Next. Now, the outer surface of this instrument is of a convex figure, as with its circumference and within its circumference are contained those 4 chords or bars, only 3 shown. And I might add that there were many instances of 3-barred sistra, and many of them, many depictions of Isis showing her rattling a 3-barred sistra. To go on, which makes such a rattling when they are shaken, nor is this without its meaning. For that part of the universe which is subject to generation and corruption is contained within the sphere of the moon. And whatever motions or changes may happen therein, they are all affected by the different combinations of the 4 elementary bodies, fire, earth, water, and air. This passage from the Gnostics and Their Remains tells us more about the sistrum's shape. Can we get a reader?
And Veronica, can you read that for us, please? Well, I don't see her unmuting. How about you, Ann Parker?
Yes. The sistrum got its peculiar outline from the Indian yoni, emblem of the female sex, and it was on account of its similar shape the almond, Lus, was also held sacred in Egypt, which seems the true origin of the Vesica Pisces, serving as the enclosure for divine figures.
Thank you. Anne? Okay. So in this passage, MPH suggests that when manifested, the four elements become lunar in nature, and just by the fact of their manifestation, and thus come under the purview of Isis as goddess of manifestation, hence the yoni-shaped sistrum representing the birth of form and the activity aspect. I can't help but wonder if the rattling of the sistrum represented invocation of the hermetic divine mind as a way of countering the torpor of the form aspect. And then finally, upon the upper part of the convex surface of the sistrum is carved the effigies of a cat with a human visage, as on the lower edge of it, under those moving chords, is engraved on the one side the faces of Isis and on the other that of Nephthys, by the faces symbolically representing generation and corruption, which, as has been already observed, is nothing but the motion and alteration of the four elements, one amongst another. We can more clearly see the cat atop this sistrum. And again, we turn to Gerald Massey for more insight on Nephthys, but I'll just say that you can see by the illustration that in Egypt, they represented a kind of alpha omega, or the manifest and the hidden dark sister, or the unmanifest, among other connotations, as we're about to learn. So, reader, please.
James, can you please read that?
The two sisters, Mary and Martha, who dwelt together at Bethany with their brother Lazarus, correspond perfectly to the two divine sisters, called at times the two dear sisters, Isis and Nephthys, with their brother Osiris in the house of Anu. It is said, I placed the two dear sisters, I have made them belonging to Anu. Isis, Nephthys, Afiru, Anup, and Osiris are the chiefs in Anu. Nephthys is the mistress of the house. She carries a house on her head, and is designated the benevolent saving sister. This mistress of the house, the saving sister, reappears in Martha, who is depicted as the housekeeper in character. She is the mistress of the house.
Okay, thank you. And I think instead of going into a new paragraph, we're going to pull the plug here. Any final thoughts or questions on anything we've covered? Could we get dates then for our next? I know this Friday is the next webinar, is a treatise on cosmic fire. It'd be terrific if you could join us for that. We're in a really exciting section on the raising of the Kundalini.
Yeah. That's on at 7 p.m. on Friday, and if you don't have the link for it, you can find it on morefederation.com. The announcement and the link is there. All right, the next secret teaching of all ages is going to be, looks like the 2nd of July.
4 weeks.
I ran out of and the next secret doctrine is going to be on the 18th of June. So that will be in 2 weeks, but let me verify the, I thought I had it here with me and I don't, I'm sorry. That'd just take me a second to pull it up. 19 March, 21 May. Ugh.
What are you trying to find? You got all the dates.
It's not the 2nd of July. It's the 9th of July.
Oh, is there a full moon problem? I bet. Because we're real close. The moon was last night.
Yes, the second, The second should be the pre-full moon. So yeah, the next Stoa is going to be a little off. It'll be the 9th.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we go an extra week. Yeah. So okay, real good. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time. Hopefully on Friday. Thanks. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.